No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to another exciting edition of Politics. This is episode 43. We are steamrolling. We are speeding towards 50 episodes. I started this thing again in the beginning of the year, really the end of January of this year, and it has been a wild ride, let me tell you. Not really, but it's been fun. I'm almost to 300 subscribers without doing much begging or pleading with people, which to me says that the content is decent and I'm saying some things that people want to hear. So we're just going to keep on powering through and moving forward. And we got a hell of a show for you today. I think I've curated some good conversational items, as I'll start calling them now. Rather than clips, because I mean, I can call them whatever I want, but we got some good ones for you today. So, let's just get started with a little rant that I have planned for you, and it's about what I like to call the religious left. Now, if you're from my era of politics, you remember or you know the term religious right. So let's start with that, right? What is the religious right? Well, the religious right are a bunch of dogmatic hypocrites, people who claim to believe in freedom. They want freedom for their religious beliefs, but they don't want freedom for people that don't, like gay people who don't align with their religious beliefs, or, free speech for people who, might conflict with their viewpoints. Now, let's be honest, there's a difference between free speech and, removing sexualized books from school literature. That's not saying you can't read the books. That's just saying they shouldn't be part of a school curriculum or available for children in a school library. That's censorship, yes, but it could also be viewed through the lens of, hey, these items are not really for the eyes of children and should be viewed either with discretion of parents' approval or, later on in life when the children are a little more adult and ready to handle these themes. And this is the kind of shit that I see the liberals yelling about now as if it's the religious right of the past, and it's not. But now what we have is the religious left. And they're not religious about church. They're religious about things like Trump and Me Too and cancel culture and January 6th and Ukraine and now Israel. They have dogmatic religious beliefs about these items, and it makes them hypocrites. To give you a good example, the Israel one is really showing people's faces because the quote unquote woke left, and I hate to call them that because it's a term that's just been beaten into the ground and perverted beyond belief. But these people are now caught in a conundrum where they're like, oh, well, we're supposed to support, the lesser and the oppressed people like the Palestinians, but we're also a party of neocon war pigs now who want to bomb everyone we can at any opportunity. And so we have to support genocide by, a country that we're supporting. So anyway, these people have a blind dogmatic nature, and they're now hypocrites on several issues due to this dogmatic belief system. And, I think that January 6th is probably the best example of this because there are a lot of people that still believe this was some kind of a violent insurrection, despite the fact that no one had guns. And Ray Epps, a guy who told people to go in the Capitol, is being protected by Congress and the mainstream press and all the people that, use this, clutch their pearls about January 6th. Now, I've said this several times before. Any of the people who are caught doing illegal things like breaking windows or vandalizing or whatever, they should go to jail. They should face consequences. I mean, maybe not go to jail, but they should face consequences for breaking the law as they did. But everyone else, I mean, you've seen the video that they tried to suppress of people walking peacefully through. There were violent instances, yes, at the Capitol, of course. I mean, we saw those on repeat in the mainstream press. But the video you didn't see was being suppressed for a very obvious reason. And these dogmatic people, who I call the religious left, will never break from their religion on these things. And it makes them look like hypocrites. The COVID is another good example. This was an opportunity for people who support bodily autonomy in the realm of women's rights and, you know, reproductive rights, to make a case to conservatives that, hey, this is the same thing as it is for a woman's right to choose whether or not she has a baby. Whether your religious beliefs like it or not, it's the same thing as the COVID, my body, my choice. And instead of doing that, the religious left went, no, you're a terrible person who wants grandma to die. You know, and so I'm going to start referring to these people as the religious left, because that's literally what they are. They're religious people with dogmatic views that hinder their ability to think clearly. And that's going to be a theme through a lot of our subject matter tonight. So let's get into our first segment. And while we're sitting here for a second, let me put up a banner here for this segment, because this is a segment about Ozzy Osbourne and his support of Black Lives Matter. I probably should have made these in advance. This was a news item that this was something I found kind of interesting. Now, I happened to watch a interview with Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife, with Adam Carolla. And Adam Carolla, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, does a lot of good work. And anyway, there was a segment where they talked about Black Lives Matter. And so, just to give you some context with Sharon Osbourne, she actually, I didn't know this, but she was canceled from that show, The Talk. And it was one of those things that, like, I think at the time everyone was being canceled so quickly, we kind of just forgot about it. It kind of just like slipped through the cracks, basically. It was one of those cancellations that no one remembers. But she was pretty quickly canceled for basically aligning with something that Piers Morgan had said about Meghan Markle. So I want to show you this clip real quick, and let's talk about it. It's definitely interesting stuff. And yeah, let's just, now that I'm all set up, let's watch this clip real quick.
Lives Matter. They were, their movement, which is a great movement. I will not put it down.
Oh,
Listen.
I will, but go ahead.
See, I love that. She's like, it's a great movement. I will not put it down. And listen, she's actually she's in the same, God bless her. She has the same view that I do about Black Lives Matter, that yes, the movement itself is meaningful and did good things, but there were corrupt people involved. It's like anything. It's not black and white. There's some gray area. Imagine that. Black Lives Matter, not black and white.
I won't put it down because it has brought change. The people that ran it in this particular state weren't honest people financially. So they took a lot of money. It didn't go where it was meant to go. I got involved in that because my husband gave them a lot of money.
Oh, really?
A lot of money.
How much is a lot of money?
$900,000.
Wow. Couldn't get to a mill, huh?
Did you catch that? Ozzy gave Black Lives Matter close to $1 million. Oh, that last hit got me. Ozzy gave Black Lives Matter close to $1 million, and she's going to explain why. Listen.
Fuck
Wow,
you.
guys sold a lot of records.
Yeah, and it was
like
Black
Sharon
Sabbath. It was Tony Iommi and Ozzy came up with this T-shirt, and instead of it saying Black Sabbath in their logo, it said Black Lives Matter in the Black Sabbath logo, and it just ran off the shelves. And we said to them, we're going to give you the money. We gave them the money, and we naturally thought that it was going to go to scholarships, to homeless. Book supplies, whatever, back into the community, and it didn't. And then they got into trouble that they got into, and I felt really so sickened by it. And they never came out when I was called a racist and said, hold on, she's given us 900 grand here. Nobody said anything. And when I would tell the press, they'd say, that's irrelevant. This isn't what this story's about.
Right.
And so it just seemed that everybody was like, I couldn't get a break.
Did you quit or get fired?
Both.
Is there a lawsuit?
Nope.
No wrongful termination, anything?
I could have gone for the balls, but it's like, what for? What for?
Yeah.
So that's the story, and this is the shirt, as you can see in my thumbnail here. But interesting story, something that I don't think a lot of people caught. And I 100% agree with Sharon's take on Black Lives Matter, because I think that it's one of those things that it's a catchy phrase, and it's just stating the obvious, but it got perverted, as things do. And I see this trend happening. You see this trend happening in everything. If you supported the anti-war movement at all recently, you'll be called a Russian, a Putin apologist. If you are, mildly critical of Israel, you'll be called an anti-Semite, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it's the same thing at work here with Black Lives Matter, where there's a couple little bad eggs or bad particles in the mix, if you want to say, and they ruin it for everyone. Because there was some corruption involved with that organization, but that doesn't change the definition of the sentiment, right? And some people can't, because of their political beliefs, will not ever come around to that reality because they don't want to, and they don't want to have to. So before I came online today, tonight, there was some breaking news, and let's talk about that. Let me create another. So I don't know. I got this email from the New York Times that we have a new House Speaker on Capitol Hill. Believe it or not, Congress actually chose a speaker. Now, the guy's name is Mike Johnson, and the press did not waste a second going in on this guy. I want to show you specifically the headline. This is, how the New York Times does their propaganda. Of course, we know this, but check this out. This is what the article actually said. So this is literally the screenshot from my email inbox of the email I got. House elects Mike Johnson as speaker after weeks of chaos. Really, guys? Weeks of chaos? They tried to get Jim Jordan in, and they didn't. But here's what it says. Worn down by infighting, mainstream and hard-right Republicans united to elect the deeply conservative lawmaker who is a leading 2020 election denier. Of course, they had to get that in, right? He's a leading election denier. Oh my goodness. So let's see what this next slide they have. This is from Reuters. This is not from New York Times because I will not pay for a subscription to New York Times. So I went with the news that I could grab. So in this clip from Reuters here, it says he's a social conservative. What does that mean? Well, Johnson is a conservative who is perhaps best known for his defense of former President Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the result of the 2020 election. Ah, no! This is how they do this shit. Anyone is a threat. Imagine, it's insane. Anyway, let's look at the next slide. So this is another little bit I wanted to touch on here, which I think is funny. So in this next bit, they say he opposes abortion rights, calling the decision to overturn federal protections for abortion a great joyous occasion. Yeah, and the Democrats didn't do anything to stop it, even though they could have at multiple times because they wanted to run on it. Opposes Ukraine aid. Okay, well, aside from the abortion stuff, I'm already starting to like this guy. Johnson is opposed to sending Ukraine aid to defend itself against Russia, receiving an F from Republicans for Ukraine, an advocacy group that compiles a report card for lawmakers on their support. I wonder who runs that. I didn't even bother to look it up yet. I'm sure it's Bill Kristol or one of those neocon dick pigs. But hey, so far the guy's 1 for 1. Let's keep going. Leadership experience. Johnson served as the chair of the Conservative Republican Study Committee and was elected vice chair of the conference, but otherwise no leadership experience. Good. That's good. He's not one of the chosen uniparty delegates, so that's good. A potential hindrance as he enters into negotiations with Democrats, with the Democratic-controlled Senate and the White House. He has also shown limited fundraising ability so far, typically a key part of the speaker's role. That line right there sums up the reason that this guy is disliked by the uniparty and the mainstream press. Right there. That's it. That's the clincher. He also has shown limited fundraising ability so far. Typically a key part of the speaker's role. Relationship with Trump. Oh. Johnson is an avowed supporter of Trump, as evidenced by his support for Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Our democracy, our precious democracy. As nominee. This story has been corrected to fix Mike Johnson's number of terms in office to 4 in paragraph 2. So they before that, I guess, kind of tried to pretend that he wasn't, he only did, or they accidentally misrepresented how long he's been in Congress. Isn't that convenient of them? Yes, it is. So this new guy, breaking news, there's a terrorist that has been elected to House Speaker, and you should clutch your pearls in shame and fear because it's over, Johnny. Democracy is dead now that a Trump-supporting, election-denying Republican who doesn't support Ukraine, God forbid. I'm sure he's adequately hawkish on Israel and China. I haven't looked, but he's from Louisiana, so it wouldn't be surprising. But hey, listen, I am honestly impressed with Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus's ability to manipulate the debate, manipulate the situation to their liking, because they didn't get Jordan in, but they did get someone in who is not a establishment stooge. And I may not agree with most of the stuff that this guy holds as values as in politics, but the fact that he's, again, universally hated or talked about like this in the press and despised by Democrats, to me, is a good sign. I mean, that's a move in the right direction. That's a sign that we might actually have some accountability on things like January 6th or, Twitter files, stuff that, I think a lot of the populist left and populist right agree on. So that's some lukewarm news, I guess, based on how you see the situation. And good job, Matt Gaetz. But I also wanted to, in contrast, play a clip of Liz Cheney, because she is she has the love of Democrats, and she obviously is someone that had been talked about for the speaker role. And so this clip is before this guy was elected, but I want you to hear how an establishment hack like Liz Cheney talks, and why this guy's election is a great contrast to her. And why it's a good thing. So let me real quick throw this back up. So this is a clip of Liz Cheney on not Meet the Press, but Face the Nation. It's like Meet the Press, only not quite. And just take a listen to some of the things she says here. We'll just watch some of this and talk about it as we go.
Liz Cheney, good morning and good to have you here in person.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Well, we've been talking about what's happening in the Middle East right now. I know you watch the region closely. President Biden counseled Netanyahu during his trip to Israel last week and repeated a certain phrase I want to play for you here in his Oval Office address.
But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it. After 9/11, we were enraged in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
And that was a nod to 9/11 and the U.S.
That's surprising.
Iraq, potentially an overreach. Do you agree?
Listen to what
warning
she says.
President Biden is issuing there that there is the risk here of Israel taking actions that could backfire on their own security?
I think that our support and defense of Israel needs to be unwavering. I think that for the most part, that's what President Biden has demonstrated. I thought that most of the themes that he laid out in his Oval Office address were
Doesn't she sound presidential?
exactly right about the importance of American leadership, the importance of understanding this is a battle between the forces of freedom and the forces of tyranny and terrorism. With respect
What's
to
the weather like on your planet?
9/11 and post 9/11, I would say the fact that we had not a single additional terrorist attack, mass casualty terrorist attack in over 20 years now demonstrates that the steps that we took were in fact effective. And
Surely you
I
can't
would
be
say the
serious.
biggest mistake,
I am
frankly,
serious.
post
And don't call me
9/11
Shirley.
was the hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan that President Trump started, President Biden completed. So I think we need to set our differences about those issues aside. We certainly do have them. But with respect to what's happening in the world today, I think it's crucially important for the world to see that the United States, we are united across party lines in the defense of Israel and in the importance of the destroying Hamas, and also a very strong warning that the president has issued to Iran.
Yeah.
And
It seems like they really, really want this whole Israel thing to boil over into a war with Iran. Like they really want that. They really want to make that the thing.
that, frankly, the Biden administration policy needs to be changed to make it consistent with the kind of warning that we've seen.
But in terms of that comment about reacting from a place of rage and unintended consequences, Secretary Blinken said the only way to defeat an ideology is by offering a better alternative. What is the
Kudos to her for making
But I
that
caution
point.
this: while you feel that
Oh God. And I actually agree with what Blinken said. I don't think he means that, but that's the right attitude.
We are united across party lines in the defense of Israel and in the importance of the destroying Hamas.
We are united. There are certain things that the uniparty is united on.
And also a very strong warning that the president has issued to Iran.
Yeah.
And that, frankly, the Biden administration policy needs to be changed to make it consistent with the kind of warning that we've seen.
But in terms of that comment about reacting from a place of rage and unintended consequences, Secretary Blinken said the only way to defeat ideology is by offering a better alternative. What is the better alternative for a conflict that has been going on for this many decades?
There is no notion in which this is a battle of ideologies when you look at what Hamas did. And I think that the world has moved on far too quickly from what Hamas did. Hamas slaughtered innocents. They invaded Israel and they slaughtered women and children.
Look, it's not okay what they did. It's terrible. And my heart goes out to the people who lost relatives. But there's a context here that is always missing from people like Liz Cheney's views on this issue. And that context is that Gaza has been called a concentration camp, an apartheid, and an open air prison by multiple human rights organizations. And anyway, let's keep listening to her. Yap.
Children and tortured people and raped people. And the fact that the world has moved on from that now.
The world has not moved on from that. The problem, Liz, is much like your father's legacy before yours. There's a greater context at play here, and the U.S. always seems to strategically gloss over that context in the interest of profits for people who make weapons, instead of the interests of the greater world as a whole. So it's really hard to take people like you and your ilk seriously on any level, because you've been continually wrong about everything up until this point, and you're wrong about this too.
That is an ideology, if it even is one, of evil. And so the way to battle that is...
Listen to the daughter of Dick Cheney talking about ideologies of evil. Oh, this is what I need to throw a banner together for this term, SLOSA, stunning lack of self-awareness. That's what SLOSA stands for. So I'm going to make that a thing, but that's some real SLOSA there. Stunning lack of self-awareness, SLOSA.
Destroy Hamas, making sure that we send a very clear message to Iran that Iran will face severe consequences if it tries to get involved here. We also, though, need to recognize the rising anti-Semitism and the expressions of anti-Semitism that we have seen across our country and across the world since October 7th must be absolutely rejected. And
okay. This is where people get absolutely stupid. I want to use the R word because it's beyond dumb. But I have played the clip multiple times of Gene Simmons talking about how Arabs are a Semitic people. And the way that these people blur these lines, again, that is the religious left. Apparently Liz Cheney is part of the religious left, the people who just go, oh, if you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite.
world must stand against that. So this is not a moral equivalence. This is not a peace process question. This was out and out slaughter, and we absolutely stand against that.
Mm-hmm. And CBS continues to tell those stories. So just
unless Israel does it. I like how she had to chime in, like, because Cheney tried to make the point that the media has moved on from it, and so she's like, we continue to report those stories, just to be clear.
When will you make a decision about whether you want to run for president of the United States?
Well, what I am doing right now, what I will continue to do, is very much focus on making sure that we get people elected at all levels who are serious.
When will you be Dick Cheney's hand puppet in the White House?
People who believe in the Constitution. I think we're at a moment in this nation where we certainly have seen, we face significant threats internationally.
Being your dad's hand puppet is the role you were born for, Liz.
We've got Iran, Russia, North Korea, China arrayed against us. Yeah. This is a threat atmosphere that we have not seen, certainly since the end of World War II.
Bob Gates said ever.
Right.
But also said there's no presidential alternative in terms of a affirmative vision for America's role in the world. Have you heard any candidates for president offer that vision?
I think that certainly you have seen some. I think that it needs to be a much louder, we need a much louder voices within both parties.
Donald Trump, the person that the uniparty hates the most, has the absolute best position on wars, and even his position is shoddy at best.
Within my own party, I don't even know if I should call it my own party, within the Republican Party right now, the extent to which you're seeing people suggest that we should abandon Ukraine, which essentially is surrendering in this battle between freedom and tyranny, and that would be very dangerous.
Surrendering the blank
As you know,
check
this massive national security
to
package can't
war profiteers like her father.
pass until there's a Speaker of the House.
Correct.
Last month, you said Congressman Patrick McHenry would make a great Speaker of the House, or it was earlier in October in his speech. He says he's not looking for a job. What is the vision for it? Is there anyone who can lead? Is he an alternative?
Look, I think what you're seeing right now among the Republicans in the House is a direct result of the decisions that Kevin McCarthy made to embrace Donald Trump.
It is a direct result of the decisions Kevin McCarthy made, but not of the ones she's saying. It's a result of the decision he made to ignore the Freedom Caucus, who threatened him by holding out their vote at the beginning of the year and extracting concessions, and then not doing what he said he would do, and instead going back to the status quo when it comes to how Congress works. And the reason that Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus people are being called terrorists, and the reason I'm happy that this guy I just showed you before made it in, is because they're actually moving the ball in changing the way that Congress works back to single item bills. This is something that they've talked about regularly, is that they lump all these bills together in an ongoing resolution or an omnibus spending bill, where you have aid for teachers and Ukraine lumped together so they can go, oh, if you don't vote for this, you're going to hurt the teachers. And Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus are making an effort to change that. And I don't care what party you belong to. That's a good thing. So let's listen to this establishment uniparty puppet finish up here.
Trump to embrace the most radical and extreme members of our party, to elevate them. So it's not a surprise that we are where we are. But
Extreme members of our party. See,
Outrage.
and the thing
Donald
about
Trump.
that, I keep accidentally hitting the jump button instead of the pause button, so that's why the clip keeps jumping around. But the most extreme members of the party, that's what they call these people, and to me, that is a sign that they're doing something right. Because the status quo, the consensus, the uniparty is what needs to go. So anyone that's being called an extremist, in my book, is doing good work. Because that's what they called Bernie Sanders. That's what they called AOC. That's what they called all of the squad when they came into play. They were all called that until they fell into line. So just remember that when you watch these tools on TV.
And unfortunately, some of his supporters who, in fact, have encouraged and taken steps that have resulted in, as we saw on January 6th, political violence.
There it is.
You have a member of Congress reportedly, like Warren
The gunless insurrection attempt
Davidson from Ohio,
by Second Amendment gun nuts.
who, in the meeting with Jim Jordan last week, when some of the holdouts raised with Jordan the fact that they were getting death threats, one of them told me that in response, Congressman Davidson said, well, that's not Jim Jordan's fault. That's your fault for voting against him.
Okay, so the death threats thing, that means fucking nothing, because all the fucking jagoffs in the security state can make bots that send death threats, and then they can go, oh, he said something that caused death threats. Yeah, I get death threats. We all get death threats on social media. Join the fucking world, lady. And honestly, block the person. Ignore it like everyone else does. That's how it works. And you're in politics. So, again, anyone that's dumb enough, first of all, to make death threats to a politician through social media deserves to be tracked down and arrested, like they will be. But this idea that, because so-and-so said something, I got death threats. That's you're Dick Cheney's daughter. He's a guy who shot his friend in the face. So forgive me for not, feeling sorry for your delicate, it's the death threats thing, especially in the digital era, is a complete straw man because anyone can do it. There are people, I'm sure, that work for the DNC that make death threat bots that every time there's a fucking someone opposes the Freedom Caucus, they send out emails. Oh, you oppose Matt Gaetz, we're gonna get you, and hype this stuff up. I mean, I've covered before Sally Albright's bot army. She works for Madeleine Albright. All these neocons, Democrats and Republicans alike, work together.
That is the kind of encouragement and acceptance of violence that is absolutely has no place in this party, should have no place in our country.
I don't disagree with that. So let me just show you this. This is an interesting little factoid. I don't know if you know this, but I've tried to cover this a couple times, but Barack Obama is a cousin of Dick Cheney. And when I went to pull this data earlier, I saw this too. Obama's family tree expanded to include the Bushes and the Pitts. So not only is he related to George W. Bush, he's also related to Brad Pitt. That's quite a pedigree, don't you think? But I just wanted to close this whole uniparty theme out by showing you that because, wow, it's very evident what's going on here. And anyone who is outside of that is the good guy, as far as I'm concerned. The good guys are the people that are being called extremists. Those are the good guys. So moving on, I got another great little conversation piece for you here. All right. So our next segment is called Bill Maher's Uniparty Roundtable. And if you guessed that it's about Bill Maher's Uniparty, if you guessed that this next segment is about Bill Maher's Uniparty Roundtable, you guessed correct. What do I win, Dustin? Well, you win this clip of Bill Maher and a bunch of out-of-touch boomers talking about politics. Now, you know all the stuff that we just covered, and we're going to go into the weeds even further after this. But I think it's important that that for me especially, because I used to watch all these people religiously. I used to watch Bill Maher. I could not wait for Bill Maher's Real Time to come on. And I actually watched this one. We're just going to play some of the overtime. It's YouTube friendly. But I watched most of this episode and I wanted to throw up through most of it. Now, to give Bill Maher a little bit of credit, I am thankful that there are voices like him in the mainstream because while he doesn't get everything right, he does get some things right. And I think that he speaks to a little bit more of the serious types, and like once and he's at least outside of the ecosystem of MSNBC enough that he can break through, right? So a good example is on the COVID stuff. I think Bill Maher's been really good about being like, what the fuck, guys? Come on. Like, you're not going to be skeptical about this. So good for him on that. Good for him. The Russiagate thing, on the other hand, he's totally doesn't get, which in his case, it's a little bit different. He has a personal vendetta with Trump. Like, Trump sued him for calling him an orangutan, and there's a whole history there and whatever. So I'll give him a teeny bit of a pass on that. And I've heard him say things like in the Carville interview, he said some things that were like, okay, he does, like with the E. Jean Carroll thing. With that case, Bill Maher was kind of like, no, it's just people saying things. And so he does see a little bit beyond his nose sometimes. This did not reassure me. But this even has some positive elements in it. So the guests on Bill's show for this, and I call it the Uniparty Roundtable, were Brett Stevens, who's a right-wing conservative that writes for the New York Times, and Paul Begala, who is an old school Democrat consultant like James Carville, who worked for the Clintons. So these are your two voices of, and then he opens with Alexandra Pelosi, the propagandist, literally a fucking propaganda. She calls herself a documentarian, but she's a propagandist. But anyway, let's kind of throw up with me here on this roundtable.
We have CNN contributor and Democratic strategist Paul Bagawa, and these are the questions hot off the press. I hold in my hand well, not that you just do Karnak and fuck with their minds. Okay. Should Rashida Tlaib, oh yes.
No one's going to get that, Bill.
Rashida Tlaib,
Johnny
who,
Carson reference.
by the way, still has
Now
not
listen to this.
acknowledged that the missile that killed the
I was actually
hospital
pretty
was
surprised
not
with
an
this.
Israeli missile, still telling the lie. Should she be forced to take down the Palestinian flag flying outside her office? Yeah, I saw that picture. Oh, there you have it.
No, the answer is no.
No.
No. I mean, I despise her political views, but absolutely not. She's an American. She can do whatever she wants.
But okay.
And I mean,
I mean, this is the American Congress. Has this been done before? Do other people?
No.
I mean, people.
I was impressed by that. And that's because he's a conservative, because liberals would not have that answer. But props to Brett Stevens for saying that, because yeah, it doesn't matter if you agree with her or not. I thought we lived in a fucking free country. I sound like Randy from South Park, or one of those angry fucking patriots. I thought this was America. I mean, if you don't sound like that at this point, what's wrong with you, right? But keep listening to this.
People come from different countries. Do they then fly the? I mean, there's
goes off
plenty
a
of
cliff
people,
right
I'm
here.
sure, who have heritage from Mexico. Do they put the Mexican flag outside their office?
I think voters should make judgments about her political choices, but I think it's the essence of a democracy that you can fly the flags that you
Where do you stand on this one?
I'm not touching that.
You're not touching.
That's principled. That's principled. Now listen to what the rest of these fucking idiots say.
Well, you are afraid to get canceled.
But
What
I
does your
will
mom
say,
think?
wait, but here's the thing. I will go into, I support the whole concept of free speech, right? And one of the main things I talk about in my movie is about when does free speech become hate speech? And when do we go after people and call it hate speech? This was where the whole thing about getting canceled comes from. Like, I'm afraid to talk about that because I don't want to get canceled. That's, people are going to say it's hate speech.
Well, what? Okay.
Why don't we just call it
Yeah.
shitty speech?
Yeah. I'm not.
It's in the eye of the hate speech is a concept that's always in the eye of the beholder.
I agree.
Hate
I've
speech
never.
is speech that I hate. So don't say anything I disagree.
Right, but there's this whole thing called free speech, but who cares if nobody's listening? We're not listening to each other, so who cares?
Okay. That is one of the absolute fucking dumbest points I have ever heard made ever.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
No, we're not listening to each other, so who cares? Why does it matter? Since we're not listening to each other, why does free speech even matter?
Hello?
I've never been in love with the concept of looking into people's minds when they commit crimes. It's a crime. You need to pay for it if you committed the crime.
What's the crime, Bill? Hanging up a flag outside your office in support of a cause because you don't like it? It's a crime? Listen to yourselves, you dumbass neoliberal stooges.
Why you did it? I don't know. That gets into crazy kind of territory of thought crimes.
Right,
Which is okay.
Exactly where we don't want to go.
But yeah, I agree. She can fly the flag anywhere. But what does it say about, your? It just seems like your loyalties are a little too divided.
I agree, and let the voters of Michigan draw their conclusions next year. I know how I would vote if I were in her district.
Let the voters of Michigan decide. Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan is a very heavy Muslim state that probably has a lot of Palestinian refugees and supports Palestine. So yeah, let the voters decide. I agree.
Absolutely, I'm going to stand up for her right to speak her mind.
What do you think of Putin's meeting with Xi? That's right.
Cheers to Mr. Brett Stevens for being consistent. I mean, I will give him credit, which is I don't agree with the guy on most things, but at least he's At least he's right on that. And you know, I applaud him for that.
Russia and Xi of China. Boy, these two, they like have friendship bracelets. One says... One says fuck and the other says America, you know?
Now it's interesting for as intellectual as Bill Maher tries to position himself, how stupid he sounds on this issue. So how unread and just dumb he sounds when it comes to this issue.
Forming a new axis of evil. Boy, I mean, you go, but it's weird because China and Russia were always at each other's throats.
It's weird. It's weird. Hey, Bill.
What's the weather like on your planet?
And Putin has this sort of fanboy appeal to the far right in the Republic of Joel. What?
Hey, Paul.
What's the weather like on your planet?
Of Republicans, which I find astonishing because they'll tell you they hate the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, good. I'm with you, buddy. But they love Putin. By the way, Putin was meeting with the Sheikh Nasrallah.
They don't love Putin. They don't see him as the villain that everyone else who's been propagandized by the war profiteering corporate media in the United States does. That doesn't, it's just like the anti-Semitic thing. A criticism of Israel is not a criticism of Semitic people. Arabs are Semitic people. God, these people are stupid.
Oh, the head of Hezbollah.
On purpose.
Right. He is behind all of the worst things and the worst people in the world.
And I think this is
yet they love him.
Something Biden deeply gets, which is that
Putin is behind all of the worst things and the worst people in the world. Is he? Really? Is there proof of that? How do these guys just get to say this shit? And what I love is any criticism or anything that breaks the narrative is propaganda. But that's not propaganda.
dictators by nature unite. Whatever their geopolitical differences, they are birds of a feather. They see themselves as authoritarians who want to destroy the free world, and that's why it's important to have leaders in the free world who recognize what the threat they pose. Hamas, Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they all have something in common.
What did Nazi Germany and Japan really...
So do you see the theme here? Brett Stevens, a very conservative, writer for the New York Times, literally billed as like one of their conservative writers, is the most sensible person at a table full of Democrats. Alexandra Pelosi and Paul Begala are old school Democrats. Bill Maher is an old school liberal. He's a hardcore Democrat. It's three Democrats, and the only one at the table that makes any sense at all is the right-wing conservative. That's how terrible our fucking political discourse in this country has gotten. That's how stupid the Democrats are.
Really have in common, except, oh, we're the bad guys.
See, and again, listen to that. That's how, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard Bill Maher say. Let's listen to that again. Listen to this.
Nazi Germany and Japan really have in common, except, oh, we're the bad guys. That's right. You're right. There was really, I guess,
So anyone that's opposed to the United States is just going to get together because they're the bad guys. We're not the bad guys. We're never the bad guys. We're always the good guys. And anyone who does anything outside of our field of control is bad.
Plan? Was there ever even a plan? We're going to divide up the world. We're going to conquer each our halves, and then obviously they would have turned on each other like Hitler turned on Stalin. It's weird. Do you think Mitt Romney is right to blame Fox News and right-wing media for radicalizing the GOP?
That's the view. I mean, then they talk about Mitt Romney and how dumb he is, as if they're not the same level of intellect when it comes to these issues. But I just wanted to show that to illustrate the point again, that these people have no clue what's going on because the media that they consume, they don't challenge themselves, and everything that speaks to any kind of factual basis outside of the mainstream is labeled as Russian or propaganda of some sort. And so they live within this American echo chamber. You heard him. He still fucking sees the world through the lens of World War II. He's talking about Hitler and Stalin. Like we still live in that world of, it's almost 100 years ago now. 80 years ago was what, like, World War II, basically. 1940, that's 60 plus 20. I'm doing quick math here. 2020, so 80 years basically, right? Am I right? Since World War II. I'm roughly speaking. And this is the headspace these people still live in, a headspace from 80 years ago that totally writes off events like Vietnam and Iraq and Korea and Libya and Syria and Afghanistan the first time and Afghanistan the second time and Iraq the second time. And so they live in it because all that's the genius of the media's maneuvering with Trump is it has made guys like Bill Maher into mindless, stupefied corporate media zombies who understand very little of what's really going on. And again, boomer time with out of touch Hollywood guy. So accurate. Slosa. Very, very much Slosa. Stunning lack. Well, actually, it's like stunning lack of any awareness. Maybe Slofa, stunning lack of foreign awareness. Well, now that I'm done berating Bill Maher, who I used to love, and like I said, I'm hard on Bill Maher, but he does do some good work, and I think he's definitely better than a lot of other media outlets in the space. So this next bit is a little bit of a shocker. I happened to see this interview with Putin in Chinese media. And so I'm going to just right off the bat say this is Chinese media. It's probably funded by the Chinese government. So it's Chinese, quote unquote, Chinese propaganda. But when you're inundated with American propaganda, it's good to hear the other propaganda. And that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, it's that way when you watch American news. You watch Fox and you watch MSNBC, and they're both towing a party line, and the truth is somewhere in the between, right? So one of the things that's been sorely lacking from the Ukraine debate is Russia's take. No one knows it for obvious reasons. And no one in the mainstream press has interviewed Putin or aired any of what his beliefs actually are. They're just assumed and implanted in your head by the security state. Because remember, it's World War II and Putin's like Hitler and we're the good guys, right? That's how it always is. Of course. Why would we be anything but the good guys? So I want to start this little episode here with saying that showing you this footage and even watching this footage does not mean that I support Putin. It does not mean that I'm anti-American. I love my country. I support my country. It means that I'm someone who's willing to challenge myself to see the big picture. And I hope that you're the same. And all you NAFO trolls in the comment, nutless actors feigning outrage, as I like to call you, that's fine. That's fine. Enjoy your mom's basement. I'll enjoy my mom's basement, and we can both just stalemate it right there. So let's start with this clip. So this is one of the opening parts of the interview where Putin talks about the relationship that Russia and China currently have. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you.
达到了历史的最高水平，而且最近您在瓦尔代会议上也说，您说俄罗斯和中国的合作对于稳定世界至关重要。您能详细的阐释一下您对目前中俄关系的定位以及对它未来发展的愿景？
Отношения между Россией и Китаем, вы знаете, сейчас вот я вам говорю то, что мне вот прямо сейчас, после того, как вы сформулировали вопрос, то, что прямо сейчас вот в голову приходит. Они ведь складывались не под сегодняшнюю конъюнктуру мировых дел. Это не результат сиюминутной политической конъюнктуры в мире, российско-китайские отношения. Они складывались на протяжении 2 десятилетий. Аккуратно, спокойно. И на каждом шаге и российская, и китайская сторона исходили прежде всего из своих национальных интересов, так как каждая из сторон это понимает, и добиваясь с обеих сторон следующего шага, всегда прислушивались к мнению и к интересам другой стороны. Мы всегда по любому вопросу старались найти компромисс, даже если это были какие-то вопросы сложного характера, доставшиеся нам еще из прежних времен.
So one of the key points I think that he makes there is when he says this is a relationship that's not due to current events. It's a relationship that has been carefully nurtured, which is an interesting thing for him to say. So in this next clip, and I kind of jumped around a little bit in this interview, but he basically talks about the US in a roundabout way, and he calls us colonialists, and he talks about the development of a multipolar world or a multipolar global order. So listen to this for a minute.
的多极化，您提到了价值观霸权、道德霸权这样的概念，您还说所谓基于规则的秩序是殖民思想的体现。您为什么会这样说？在您看来，应该如何推动国际关系的多极化和民主化？
Вот вы сейчас сказали, порядок, основанный на правилах. А вы видели когда-нибудь эти правила?
Have you ever seen these
Нет,
rules?
потому что их никто никогда не писал, и никогда никто ни с кем не согласовывал. Как же можно говорить о порядке, основанном на правилах, которых никто не видел? Ну, с точки зрения здравого смысла, это нонсенс, это какая-то чушь. Но это выгодно для тех, кто пропагандирует такой подход. Потому что если этих правил никто не видел, это значит, что те, кто говорят об этом, сами придумывают эти правила от случая к случаю так, как им это выгодно. В этом и есть колониальный подход. Потому что колониальные страны, они всегда считали, что они люди первого сорта. Ведь они всегда говорили о том, что они несут просвещение своим колониям, что они цивилизованные люди, несут благо цивилизации другим народам, которых считают народами второго сорта. Вот ничего удивительного в том, что сегодняшняя политическая элита, скажем, в США, говорит о том, что говорит о своей исключительности. Но это и есть продолжение этого колониального мышления. То есть, когда они говорят, что мы исключительные, это значит, что? Это значит, что другие люди, все люди какого-то другого второго сорта. А как иначе воспринимать это? Это и есть рудименты колониального мышления, ничто иначе. Наш подход совсем другой. Мы исходим из того, что все люди равны, все имеют одинаковые права, и права и свободы одной страны и одного народа заканчиваются там, где появляются права и свободы другого человека или целого государства. Вот так постепенно и должен рождаться мир. Вот именно к этому мы и стремимся, и именно это составляет основу нашего взаимодействия с Китаем на международной арене.
最近金砖国家合作机制迎来了扩员，从原来的5个国家增加到了11个国家。在您看来，这是一个怎样的历史变局标志？那么，俄罗斯作为2024年的金砖国家轮值主席国，又计划发挥怎样的作用？
Многополярный мир создается сам по себе по факту, но его создание неизбежно. И происходит оно в связи с ростом потенциала многих стран, в том числе и не в последнюю очередь с ростом потенциала Китайской Народной Республики. Индия растет, в
Countries like
Азии,
India and
Индонезия
Indonesia
растет,
are growing in
многие другие
Asia.
государства в
Countries in
Латинской
Latin America,
Америке,
such as Brazil, are
Бразилия,
also on the rise.
Россия встает на ноги и
And
крепнет.
Russia is
И
getting back on
повторяю
its
еще
feet.
раз,
I
это
want to reiterate that
проявление
this is a
объективного
reflection of the
процесса
objective
формирования
shaping the multipolar
многополярного
world.
мира. Это значит, что все,
It
кто
demonstrates that all
присоединился
countries joining
к
BRICS
БРИКС, поддерживает эту идею и
support the idea
концепцию
of a
формирования многополярного
multipolar
мира.
world.
Никто не хочет быть на вторых
No
ролях
one
у какого-то
wishes to be
суверена. Все
a
хотят
vassal of
равных
another
отношений.
country. Everyone seeks
И
equal
видят,
relationships.
если присоединяются
We
к
can see
БРИКС,
that countries that
что
have joined BRICS
в рамках
can strengthen
расширения и в рамках укрепления вот
multilateral
такого формата, вот таких вот отношений между странами, мы можем добиться этой цели
working together to
быстрее
accelerate the
на
process of
основе
building a
объединения
multipolar
усилий.
world.
胡宁总统，您非常了解历史，
You know
您也是
history
历
very
史的
well.
亲历
You're
者
also a
和缔
witness
造
of
者。
history and
而
a
纵
creator of
观近
history.
现代史，
Throughout
在一
modern
些国
history,
家和地
in
区
some countries and
被视
regions,
作国际关系
theories
规范
have
和
been
范式的
regarded
理
as
论，比方
norms.
说现实主义，其实并没有解决人类社会发展所面临的安全困境和发展赤字。
And the
所以在现
development
在这样
of society as the world stands. So, okay. Anyway, you get that one. I've been trying to read these, but I can't really keep up. I can't really keep up as well as I would like to keep up. So I'm trying to read this stuff, but you know, you can always watch the full video. I'll try to remember to put a link in the description. But in this next clip, Vladimir, your boy Vladimir, talks about temporary figures, which is interesting. Listen to this.
Текущего момента. Мы стараемся думать, оценивать ситуацию в комплексе и смотреть в будущее. И в этом смысле, конечно, вот он, смотрите, в 2013 году говорил здесь о формировании вот такого глобального мира и взаимосвязи между судьбами всех стран и народов на планете. А потом выступил с инициативой «Один пояс, один путь». Но это же практическая реализация того, о чем он говорил, ну, более или менее в теоретическом плане. Мне кажется, что последовательность и движение к общим целям при осознании сути происходящих событий, это отличает и председателя Сингапиня, и политику КНР.
胡宁总统，您和习近平主席会面大约有40次了。习近平主席在您看来是一个什么样的领导人？您和他之间有没有一些有趣的故事可以跟我们分享一下？
Это, конечно, один из признанных мировых лидеров. Вот хорошо, что вы вспомнили, по сути, его выступление в Крыму в 2013 году. А я еще связал это, видите, с идеей «Один пояс, один путь». Я в третий раз повторю, но это очень важно. Не принимает решение сиюминутного характера на основе какой-то конъюнктуры текущей. Он оценивает ситуацию, анализирует и смотрит в будущее. Это очень важно. Это и отличает настоящего мирового лидера от людей, которые мы называем временщиками, которые приходят на 5 минут для того, чтобы покрасоваться на международной площадке, и также исчезают незаметно. Конечно, председатель совершенно другой человек. Он основательный, спокойный, но деловой и надежный партнер. Вот я хотел бы это подчеркнуть. Если мы с ним о чем-то договариваемся, можно быть уверены в том, что наши договоренности будут исполняться с обеих сторон. Что касается встреч наших, много было, это хорошо. Очень хорошая у нас была поездка, визит был председателя Си Цзиньпина.
So the last piece of this interview I want to show you, and it's worth watching the whole thing and listening to what he says. It's definitely pretty fascinating. The last piece of this I would like to show you is a point where Putin talks about Ukraine. And again, regardless of what you think about this situation, no one has ever heard his side of the story in the mainstream media. And you have to ask yourself why that is. Did they interview Saddam Hussein during the Iraq War? I don't think so. I don't think they ever do that. They never interviewed. Maybe they do. Maybe I missed it. It could have happened. But even Tucker Carlson got spied on because he was trying to set up a meeting to interview Putin and talk to him about how he sees things. It doesn't mean that it's right, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong either. And it's good to hear what these people are saying, because we're engaged in a war with them, albeit a proxy war. So listen to what he says about Ukraine. This is interesting.
总统，您如何看待乌克兰危机的和平解
How do you
决
see
的
the
前景
prospect of a？
和
peaceful
平什么时
resolution
候
in
能够到来？
Ukraine? When can
您
peace
如何评
arrive?
价中方此前提出的
How do
关于
you
政治解
evaluate
决乌
China's
克兰危机的中
position
方
on
立场？
this political settlement of the Ukraine?
Мы
Yes, we
благодарны
are
нашим
grateful to our
китайским
Chinese
друзьям за то, что они
friends
думают о том,
for
как
thinking
этот
about how to
кризис
end this
прекратить.
crisis.
Я, тем не менее, хочу напомнить, что
However, I
военные
would
действия
remind
начались
everyone
на
that the
Украине
military action
не с
in
нашей
Ukraine didn't start with
специальной
special
военной
military
операции, а
operations,
гораздо раньше.
but began
В
earlier in
2014
2014.
году, когда западные страны,
It was the
выступив
West,
гарантом
President
договоренности
Yanukovych
между
and the
президентом
opposition,
Януковичем и оппозицией, забыли
they
про свои
forgot their
гарантии буквально
guarantees just a
через
few days after the
пару дней,
agreement was signed.
и более того, способствовали
And even
государственному перевороту.
masterminded a
Официальные
coup.
лица
US government
администрации
officials
США
even
прямо
openly
заявили,
acknowledged
что
that.
потратили на это большие деньги, по-моему, 5 миллиардов они назвали.
They
А
spent a lot
затем
of money on this,
развернули, по
reportedly
сути,
$5 billion. Then they
руками
used the Kiev
киевского
regime to
режима,
launch
развернули
military
боевые
operations in the
действия
Donbass
на
region of the southeastern
юго-востоке
Ukraine,
Украины, в Донбассе. И 8 лет
which
вели
lasted
эти
for
боевые
8 years
действия,
and killed women and children.
убивая женщин и детей. И никто на
The
Западе
West either
не
turned a
обращал на
blind
это
eye or
внимания. Или
pretended
делал
they
вид,
didn't
что не
notice.
замечает. Несмотря на то, что были
Despite this,
подписаны
we signed the
соглашения
Minsk
в
Accords in the
столице
Belarusian
Беларуси, в Минске,
capital.
которые назывались Минскими соглашениями, Россия сделала все для того,
Russia
чтобы
tried its best to follow this path
идти по этому пути и урегулировать
and
конфликт.
resolve the
Нет,
conflict, but was
и
constantly
этого
obstructed.
сделать не позволили. Напомню, что когда Украина получала
I'd like
свою
to remind you,
независимость,
when
или
Ukraine gained
провозгласила свою
independence and
независимость,
declared
то
it,
основополагающий
the
документ,
foundational
который
document was the
был
Declaration of
положен в
Independence of Ukraine.
основу независимой Украины, Декларация о независимости. И основной
The main
тезис
point
этой
of which was
декларации о
that Ukraine
независимости
was a neutral
заключается в том,
country.
что Украина является нейтральным государством.
The main,
Нет.
but in
В
2008, when there was no
2008
crisis
году
in Ukraine,
зачем-то никакого кризиса еще не было. Объявили о том, что
why did the West announce
Украину
its
ждут в
hopes
НАТО.
for Ukraine to join NATO?
Зачем, до сих пор
Why
никому
was-
не понятно. И
why
так
is there
из
nobody
года
knows?
в год, из года в год накаляли и
year
накаляли
after year,
обстановку.
the West
В конце
added
концов,
fuel to the fire. Ultimately, the
кризис
crisis broke
2014
out
года,
in
боевые действия,
2014.
а мы никогда не
We have never
возражали
opposed a
против
peaceful
этого.
revolution to the
Более
Ukraine
того, даже
crisis. In fact,
договорились
we agreed on one
в
at a
Стамбуле
point
вот
in
в свое время
Istanbul. We were ready
о
for
том,
it.
что мы готовы к этому. При обеспечении, хочу это
But I
подчеркнуть,
must
законных интересов России в
peaceful
сфере
real
безопасности.
resolution should
И там
ensure Russian
украинская
security.
сторона нарисовала себе очень такие жесткие рамки
They set a very
обеспечения безопасности.
strict
И мы
framework,
практически с этим
which is
согласились.
essentially
Но как только
agreed
наши
to.
войска
However,
отошли
after our troops withdrew from
от
Kiev,
столицы Украины, от Киева, сразу украинская сторона
the
выбросила
Ukrainian
в
side
печку
immediately
все
tore
эти
up all these
договоренности.
agreements.
Но мы знаем,
Of
естественно,
course, we are
предложения наших
very
китайских
appreciative
друзей.
of our Chinese
Мы высоко
proposal by
ценим
our
эти
Chinese
предложения.
friends.
Я считаю, что они вполне
I think these
реалистичны.
proposals are very
Во
relevant.
всяком случае, могли бы
And they
быть
serve as the
положены
basis
в
for a peace
основу
agreement.
мирных договоренностей. Но,
They
к
can't
сожалению,
serve. Unfortunately,
противная
the other side
сторона
doesn't want to hold any negotiations.
не желает вести каких-либо переговоров.
中方一直倡导要坚持共同、综合、合作和可持续的安全观，实现地区的长治久安。在您看来，俄罗斯和乌克兰还有没有在短时间内缩小立场差距的可能？
Да, мы всегда тоже об этом говорили. Мы говорили о том, что нельзя строить безопасность одних государств на основе подрыва безопасности других. Все должны быть, безопасность для всех должна быть одинаковой. В этой связи для нас чрезвычайно важно внеблоковый характер Украины. Нам же говорили в 1991 году, прежняя, тогдашняя, так скажем, того времени администрация США, что не будет расширения НАТО на восток. После этого состоялось 5 волн расширения. 5. И каждый раз мы высказывали свои озабоченности. Каждый раз нам говорили, ну да, мы вам обещали не расширять НАТО на восток. Но это же устные были. А где бумажка с нашей? Бумажки? Нет. Ну все, до свидания. Как, понимаете, как вот с такими людьми очень трудно вести диалог. трудно вести диалог. Возьмите, я уже
Take the
приводил этот
Iran
пример,
nuclear deal as an
пример
example, which I have mentioned
иранской
before.
ядерной программы. Вот
All
долго
parties
вели переговоры
negotiated
по
it for a
поводу
very long
иранской
time,
ядерной программы. Договорились,
reached
достигли
a
компромисса,
compromise and signed documents.
подписали документы. Пришла другая администрация, все
Yet when
раз,
the new
и
new
выбросила
U.S.
все в
administration
помойку.
came in, everything was
Как
thrown
будто и
to the
не было этих
dustbin, as
договоренностей.
if these agreements
А
had
как же
never existed.
договариваться, если
If every new administration starts things over,
каждая администрация будет
if
что-то
every game
менять с
begins
нуля, с
at the
центра
center of
полюса начинать?
any issue and any
Ну, вот,
subject, how
это по
can we
любому
talk?
вопросу.
That's true of any issue and any subject regarding. So he's basically saying that, hey, we are open to talks, but every time we make agreements, they get thrown in the dirt. So that right there is why I say that Bill Maher and these neocon hacks on his show, they're all neocons, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, are idiots who obviously don't know what's going on or don't care to know what's going on because, you know, they're comfortable being, you know, having the same exact view of the world with the people that they supposedly view as a complete and total threat to democracy. And as you can see with the way, you know, they're positioning this new speaker and anyone who opposes the uniparty, it is a uniparty. All with the same sentiment, all with the same players. Paul Begala and Brett Stevens are not that much different. And actually, Brett Stevens is more sane than Paul Begala. And whether you agree with everything Putin said here or not, he seems a lot more reasonable than the US does. And what he laid out, if there's any truth to that, which there is a lot of evidence that there's a lot of truth to that, it's a tragedy that people don't we don't listen to things like this. We don't listen to Chinese propaganda just to hear what they're saying. You know, it's been demonized to the point where, you know, people are intellectually scared to basically do anything about it. So moving on to our next segment for the night, we are going to talk about Gaza. And there's actually, it's crazy, there's a death metal band called Gaza, which is a hardcore name when you look at Gaza and the history of it. And what I like to do whenever I discuss this issue is I like to play clips from the gray zone, because the gray zone tends to have a view that is counter to the mainstream view, which I've heard plenty of, and you'll hear plenty of all the time. I've heard my whole life, and it's not bad to hear that side too, but we get plenty of that. So I'm here to present alternative viewpoints, or viewpoints that might be outside of the mainstream. That's you know, that's what you come here for, despite that Liz Cheney clip I just played you that made us all throw up in our mouths a little bit. So in this first clip, I'm just going to play kind of basically Max and Aaron's intro, where they just kind of go over the situation at large. And this is pretty recent, from a few days ago.
In unprecedented times, I can't recall in my lifetime a situation as troubling as this. You know, obviously atrocities happen all the time, but right now we're dealing with an Israeli government that is openly flaunting its atrocities, including violating every supposed sacred red line when it comes to the laws of war, openly announcing the intent to bomb hospitals. And then when it does bomb hospitals, putting out demonstrably fake evidence, as it did the other day with that alleged audio intercept of 2 Palestinian militants that, by all accounts, is a complete fabrication. And
So this isn't related to the quote unquote hospital bombing that was supposedly debunked, but I don't trust, I haven't dug into the hospital bombing thing yet, but we're going to get into it a little bit later, where Joe Rogan had a guy who was basically, yeah, that was totally debunked. And the missile was actually a Hamas missile that fell in the parking lot. It was a dud. They accidentally shot themselves. Doy. I don't believe that. I really don't. I want to see the proof of that. I want to see, and even the proof can be fabricated in today's world with AI and everything. So I want to see the proof that that's false. I don't buy it. And especially when what Aaron's talking about here, these fabricated voicemails and stuff.
We have the Biden
Propaganda
administration
is part of the war.
applauding all of this, cheering all this on. Biden gives this unhinged speech last night. We're going to talk about, but Max, I can't recall a speech that demented in U.S. history. Maybe my memory is short, but somehow linking the proxy
Maybe it's because Biden has dementia.
war in Ukraine to now backing Israel's massacres in Gaza and pretending as if he's on the side of human rights and having the gall to claim that he cares about Palestinians and speaking out against bigotry, which
Here's Biden's puppeteers when the Israel thing broke out.
he encouraged openly by, for example, repeating the lie about beheaded Palestinian babies, which then was part of the climate that led to that gruesome murder of the 6-year-old Palestinian boy in Chicago. And then Biden goes out and pretends as if he cares about Palestinian lives. So anyway, we're going to get into all this, but
yeah, he says his name. He's like, his name was Wadia.
Yeah.
I thought it was important for me to watch Blinken's appearance at the State Department. It was supposed to be a briefing by Matthew Miller at 1, but then there was a release of 2 American hostages from Chicago. They were released by Hamas through negotiations with Qatar. Blinken wanted to announce that as kind of a diplomatic win, although the U.S. is doing everything possible to prevent the captives from being released. And then Blinken proceeded to repeat that everyone in Gaza are human shields. He was asked, is Israel actually obeying the laws of war, and that Israel, what separates Israel and the U.S. from barbarians like Hamas is that they believe in democracy and the rule of war. So just more green lighting of this a hideous blitzkrieg as Israel seems to be preparing some kind of ground invasion. There are some sources murmuring that the Biden administration is trying to delay a U.S. assault of the Gaza Strip. We heard Biden's speech that Aaron mentioned where he tied Ukraine to dead Israeli children, alluding to the beheaded babies that did not exist. I'll have a piece coming out on another source.
The press was like, hey, Biden, have you done, you've done so much horrible stuff as president already. What can we expect moving forward? And this was Biden's response.
I've not yet begun to defile myself.
That's been manipulating Biden from within the Israeli prime minister's office. It's a very interesting one who fed him those photos that didn't exist. And so Biden is basically telling the Republicans in the Freedom Caucus and Senate Republicans like J.D. Vance, who've opposed Ukraine aid, that if you don't send Zelensky your billions, you are an anti-Semite terror simp. That's basically the message. And we'll go through Biden's speech later. I think it's important to get some updates from the ground, Aaron. We have Israel basically telling people to leave the largest hospital, or one of the largest hospitals in Gaza City, Al-Quds Hospital. This is an urgent appeal from the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. Palestinian Red Crescent Society faces an imminent threat. The Israeli occupation forces demand the evacuation of Al-Quds. There are 12,000 displaced civilians inside. They're calling on the international community to avert another catastrophe like the one at Al-Ahli Hospital, where anywhere from 100 to 500 civilians were killed in a strike that Biden blamed on Palestinian armed factions. And here is what it looks like inside Al-Quds Hospital today. These are some of the 12,000 there. And basically, Israel is going to send them out into the street. Many of them have already had their homes destroyed. Send them to nowhere, where they will then be bombed again with its forces poised to enter, which everyone agrees will be a complete bloodbath.
So how do we solve this? Can we solve this? I don't know. I really don't. It's been going on so long, and you feel for the Palestinian people, but you also feel for the people who lost loved ones in the attack on Israel. And it's kind of a back and forth, and it just never seems to end. This has been going on as long as I can remember. I remember hearing about tension and turmoil in Gaza since the time I was a little kid in the the background noise that was the news back then. Now I'm actually tuned into some of that background noise. So how do we solve Gaza? Well, I think I know someone who has some answers. And this is the part of the broadcast where we get a little stupid. We get ridiculous. This is the funny part of the broadcast, because I always like to leave on a funny note. I like to end on something funny rather than leave you with the impending sense of dread that kind of every other mainstream news show has to offer these days. So I thought this was pretty funny. Let me start with this. This is how Dillon opened his recent podcast. This is hilarious.
Sorry, we are a little late. Just getting back from always the spirit of Princess Diana is with us. Hello. Hi. Hi, Princess Diana. How are you? I'm good. Are you seeing what's going on in our world right now? Yes. And I believe in a Palestinian state because I was killed by the Jews in a tunnel. Hey. Princess Diana is out of her mind. I was killed by Jews in a tunnel? Hey. Anyway,
all right.
Two guests are here that don't know what I'm going to say.
Okay, so this is the point where Tim solves Gaza. Listen to this.
Now, go on the record. Mike Cannon on Twitter. What are you, at Mike Feeney? Muslims or Jews? Go on the record now. Who is it?
Team Peace.
Whoa.
Good answer. Tim's kind of making light of the whole situation here, obviously.
Okay. That's a member of the LGBTQ community here.
I don't think any of the children of either side need water. That's
Here's
what I think.
I'm worried about. That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great
what I'm worried
point.
about. Even if this all ends tomorrow, I feel like people in that region are going to hate each other for a long time. It's just there's no hope of a reconciliation.
Right.
Right?
It doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't feel like it.
It's kind of it goes,
When is it going to be like Palestinians and Israelis having like hot sex?
There's got to be
something.
That's
right?
for sure under like a taboo porn category.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's got to be.
When are they gonna walk Gaza with like the Bloods and Crips with the blue and the
there you go
handkerchief tied together and just be like, guys, it's over.
I mean, hopefully the end of the week. It doesn't seem like
That'd be nice.
No, I mean, I worry about people that are living there. Are they going to be able to? Because everyone wants to be fun and cool, and it's just not like I feel for the kids that are growing up in Gaza, and I feel for the kids that are growing up in Israel that are like not, like their lives now are just completely shattered,
Yeah. It's awful. Yeah. No, it's truly a terrible, awful thing. I don't know. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. Hard agree.
But it's what it is.
Strongly agree.
I got to speak out for the people.
You have to use your platform.
This is it.
Because there's a lot of people over there right now. Let's be honest, not for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people over there right now hurting, and they're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not nice. No. And what I would like to say is stop it.
Yeah.
Right?
To whom?
Yeah.
What?
To whom?
I say stop it to all.
The blanket stop it.
Well, I say it to everyone.
Smart. It's good.
Me and my cousins used to throw each other down.
There's the answer.
Sure.
During Thanksgiving. And you know what my Aunt Carol would say? She'd have a glass of wine and she'd go, stop! And we'd go, but he did it, they did it. And she'd go, everyone stop it. Everyone stop it. You're disrespecting Nanny's house. Stop it now. And that's kind of what the energy here. The energy here is just cut it out. You're acting like a bunch of knuckleheads and dodo birds.
But who's
Dodo birds went extinct.
That's what my grandmother would say. You're being a bunch of dodo birds.
Who's the grandmother in this situation? Biden? He's
I don't know. China, Iran, I don't know. Syria? I have no idea.
Joe Biden and his individually closing eyes.
Yeah, I mean, here's what we went to a great restaurant last night.
So there's a point there where Tim Dillon, he basically says, stop it. Stop it. Someone just needs to tell them to stop it. And what it reminded me of, and I had to go dig up the clip, what that reminded me of was, do you remember if you're old enough, let me put it this way. If you're my age, you're old enough to remember the first Democratic primary debate when Hillary Clinton told Bernie Sanders that she went down to Wall Street and told them to cut it out. And I happened to dig up a clip that a fellow Bernie bro posted on YouTube. So let's take a walk down memory lane real quick with that. Watch this.
Leadership and Wall Street spending billions of dollars in lobbying. When the Clinton administration, when Alan Greenspan said what a great idea it would be to allow these huge banks to merge, Bernie Sanders fought them and helped lead the opposition to deregulation.
Not anymore.
Today, it is my view that when you have the three largest banks in America are much bigger than they were when we bailed them out for being too big to fail, we have got to break them up.
Secretary Clinton, you have to be able to respond. He brought you up.
You know,
Here it is.
I respect the passion and intensity. I represented Wall Street as a senator from New York, and I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out. Quit foreclosing.
Notice how she said before the big crash that we had, she went down there and said, cut it out. let's hear that again.
And I basically said, cut it out. Quit foreclosing on homes.
Quit foreclosing on
engaging in
homes,
these
guys.
kinds of speculative behaviors.
In my view, Secretary Clinton, Congress does not regulate Wall Street. Wall Street regulates Congress. And we have got to break off these banks. Going to them and saying, please do the right thing.
No, that's
is
not
kind
what,
of naive.
And there you have it. Bernie Sanders laying it down. It's kind of naive to just tell people to cut it out. So I was obviously clearly joking that Tim Dillon had the solution with his ants. Hey guys, stop it thing for Israel Palestine. I think it's a funny idea, but it is not unfortunately a tenable reality. And just ask Hillary Clinton, who went down to Wall Street before the crash and told them to cut it out. It worked real well, didn't it? Didn't it, Hills? So we are nearing the end of this broadcast. We're already at an hour, 30 minutes. I got a couple more things to talk about with you before we cut out. And I'm trying to decide which one of these I want to end on. Well, okay, here's what we're going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is show you this clip. So Joe Rogan had this guy on, and the guy was clearly an advocate for Israel, but they were talking about just war in general. And I'm going to close it out by kind of with some Tool lyrics and another funny Tim Dillon clip. So this next clip, actually, let me edit this real quick. I forgot a word there, if you noticed. Here we go. So fighting overs, what? It's the sunglasses, guys. It's the sunglasses. So this last segment is about fighting over pieces of the ground. And I'm going to start it off with this clip of the brilliant philosopher, Mr. Joe Rogan, talking about the state of war as of right now. So listen to this. I thought this was really good.
what's terrifying is there doesn't seem what's always terrified me about the Middle East is that there doesn't seem to be a clear way to resolve this. I mean, if Saudi Arabia and Iran, or rather Israel, came to some sort of an agreement and made peace and were able to establish that long term, that'd be a great step in the right direction.
It would.
But other than that, like when you look at what's happened now, oh my God, the rhetoric from both sides, it's just, didn't we learn anything from World War II? Didn't we learn anything from the Holocaust? Didn't we learn anything from human beings' ability to other human beings, to just turn them into a thing that's not them, dehumanize them? And that there's this impulse to do so that existed forever, because when we were tribal people that probably barely had a language, you had to be absolutely terrified of marauding male tribes that came over your border and wanted to kill you and take your resources and steal your women, because that's what they did. And so we have this ability to look at other human beings as an other and get ruthless and horrifyingly violent, because that was the only way for us to survive for thousands of years. So it's ingrained in our system. But it's now it exists in the context of global war. And it exists in a time where you can manipulate media and spread false narratives, and governments are allowed to use propaganda.
Just like Max and Aaron just talked
They're
about.
allowed to lie to people if it's for the overall better good of the nation. It's wild. And that's the root of the issue. The root of the issue is how every human being sort of reluctantly admits that there's almost no way to stop all wars. Right now, if you had a magic solution to stop all wars in the world, what would it be? It doesn't exist. That's terrifying, because the thing that we are scared of the most is global thermonuclear war, the thing that everybody should be the most terrified of, that we get so stupid that we wipe every human being off the face of the planet, and we're more than capable of doing it some insane number of times over. And that they're playing with the very first steps of that game. They've moved the first pawn out onto the chessboard of the global thermonuclear war chess game.
And if you watch that, the guy's like, well, who? He immediately tries to make it a Israel versus Palestine thing. And Joe Rogan's just speaking at a broader level. But I like his sentiment there. And it made me think of this song Tool has called Right Into. Tool is out touring right now. They're one of my favorite bands. I would argue the Pink Floyd of my era. So I just want to share some of these lyrics with you real quick, because I thought they are very pertinent to this subject. And just brilliant. Music is, to me, everything. And I think go listen to this song if you've never heard it. It's fucking brilliant. But the lyrics go, angels on the sideline, puzzled and amused. Why did Father give these humans free will? And now they're all confused. Don't these talking monkeys know that Eden has enough to go around? Plenty in this holy garden, silly monkeys. Where there's one, you're bound to divide it right in two. And the sentiment there, obviously, is we always find something to fight over. So it keeps going. Angels on the sideline, puzzled and baffled and confused. Father bless them all with reason, and this is what they choose. Monkey killing monkey over pieces of the ground. That line to me is just, I've been thinking about it for weeks now. Silly monkeys, give them thumbs, they forge a blade, and where there's one, they're bound to divide it right in two. And the way that Maynard puts the melodies together here is so brilliant. You know, he's like, give them thumbs, they forget, they forge a blade, and where I'm not even going to embarrass myself by trying to sing it. I'm just going to finish reading the lyrics for you. So this next section is kind of the clincher in the end of the song, where it gets like into the heavy stuff. But he says, monkey killing monkey over pieces of the ground. Silly monkeys, give them thumbs, they make a club to beat their brother down. How they've survived so misguided is a mystery. So this part, he's like, give them thumbs, they make a club to beat their brother down. And then he kind of breaks off in this, how they've survived so misguided is a mystery. I'm a terrible singer, but you get the idea. Repugnant is a creature who would squander the ability to lift an eye to heaven, conscious of his fleeting time here. Gotta divide it all right in two. Gotta divide it all right in two. Fight till they die over sun, over sky. They fight till they die over sea, over air. They fight till they die, blood over love, over blood over love. They fight till they die over words polarizing. Angels on the sideline again, benched along with patience and reason. Angels on the sidelines again, wondering where this tug of war will end. Got to divide it all right in two. And heavy song. Go listen to it. It's absolutely brilliant. And just the lyrics to that song have been sticking with me. So all the impending doom now aside, let's end with this clip of Tim Dillon, which I think is absolutely hilarious. This guy is such a genius. So this is actually a commercial from a completely different episode that he did. And you just have to watch it. I'm not even going to ruin it for you. It's just so brilliant. And I love this kind of comedy because it's kind of what Howard Stern used to do to push the envelope when he was on mainstream radio. You know, they would have a commercial that they're like, oh, come on down to Sofa King. We got the best prices at Sofa King because our prices are so fucking low. You know, and they do this play on words type of shit. So Tim is doing this bit here, and I'm going to end off with this before we go to the credits. But I want to say thank you to everyone in the comments. Of course, my brother Willie Bragg. I need to get together with you. We need to do another chat sometime. And you know, everybody that's taking the time to watch, thank you so much. And I hope that I'm providing some kind of value to you on some level because, like I've said before, this is my vent, and it's just how I get my frustration about the current climate of things out. And so I'm very happy that there are other people that I think feel the same as me and value independent media and independent commentary and honest commentary. And again, I thank y'all for that. So I'm going to bless you with this final gift before the stream is over. And so enjoy this hilarious Tim Dillon advertisement where he talks about what he had to do to get Taylor Swift tickets. Good night, y'all.
Boys, love those guys. Many people don't know the story about when I tried to get tickets to the Taylor Swift concert, but I was desperate and I started prostituting my body to get tickets to it because I couldn't afford them. And I didn't understand these scalpers and these websites, and I was prostituting myself. And it was hard, but I kept doing it for about 3 months in hopes that I could afford to see Taylor Swift at, I forget where, but one of the places she was going, SoFi, maybe? And I became a prostitute because of it, and I have AIDS. And AIDS is not a big deal as much because you can survive with AIDS for a very long time, although it is awkward to bring up. And it's not even HIV, it's full-blown. I have full-blown AIDS, which still is bad. Because I wanted to see that concert so badly, I had full-blown AIDS because I was prostituting myself. And I would let anyone do anything to me for any amount of money. Scat, piss, shit, blood, play, any of it. Any of it. Do you know how much I love Taylor Swift? When you're getting just fucked by people you don't even know, because one guy, he would wear a mask and hold a gun to my head, and I would just be on all fours, and he would just come in, and I would see him in the mirror with the mask on, and he would hold a gun to my head, which he said wasn't loaded, and I hope it wasn't, and then he would leave. And
it was, you know, I don't know if he gave me AIDS, but there was another way to do this. And I wish I'd known about this app earlier, and it was the Game Time app. And they have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from all seats of the venue, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. And that to me is exciting because you can get the best tickets, the best deals, no AIDS from this app. You just can do it. And if you download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code TIM for 20% off, $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code TIM for 20% off your first purchase. You're going to have a much better life because you're not going to be in a motel in Jersey with a gun to your head, getting peed and pooed on so that you can go see Taylor Swift, you know? But when I finally made it and I was in that, and she did Love Story, every time I was beaten by a trick, and it was a lot. Every time I was beaten by a trick, pissed on by a trick, was worth it. When I heard her do Love Story, whoo, I would do it all again. But you don't have to. Go to the Game Time app. Create